Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball Week 4 Picks Against the Spread edition. I'm Aaron, and as per usual, I'm joined by Mr. John Harris on this fine Thursday, which is when we're recording. Probably, if you're watching or hearing, it'll probably be Friday. But like I just mentioned, we're doing our picks today, so we're just gonna dive right into it. We already picked our Thursday night picks last podcast, but just for reference, we both picked Cincinnati. Cincinnati was favored by 7.5 at Cincinnati over Jacksonville. In regards to the standings, so I don't forget to say this right off the bat. Last week, John went 8-8. I went 9-7. Unfortunately, the Dallas game, I picked Philly. If some people remember, that was unfortunate because John got one back on me. Otherwise, would have made more ground. But nonetheless, John still at even 500 for the season going into this week, 24-24. I am 2 games behind him at 22-26. So slowly climbing back, but obviously we're only barely even touched the season. So like I mentioned, going into the week 4 picks, already made a Thursday nighters. And once again, if you don't know how spread works, the team that's favored, which I will typically try to say first, they have to score, basically beat the other team by more points than the spread is to technically beat the spread. So like I mentioned for Cincinnati, they have to win by more than 8 for John and I to be right tonight, because the spread's 7.5, and you can't have half points. Anyways, so John, going right into it, I'm going to lead you off with the Washington football team. They are going to Atlanta. Washington is favored by 1.5. Who are you going with here and why?
So this game was unnecessarily difficult, and I think that's because of what the Giants did last week.
Yeah.
And we saw how close the Giants-Washington game was, so that maybe you sit there and think, because like on paper, the Washington should win this game. They're better. That's the reason they're favored. But then you see the Giants, if they're an offsides call away from beating Washington, and then they go and lose to Atlanta in a tight one. So you're like, who knows? But I'm just going with the better team. And at least the team that I think is better. Obviously, 3 weeks in, it's a little tough, but I'm going with Washington here. I think that Atlanta, they had a good game last week, but I put more blame on the Giants coaching staff and Jason Garrett and all that kind of stuff. And I think Washington has a far better coaching staff than the Giants do. So I expect them to have some success. Taylor Heineke, I think in both of his starts so far, has thrown multiple touchdowns. And so against a porous Atlanta defense, I think they should be, good here. So yeah, I'm taking Washington, but for some reason this game feels like a trap game, even though I don't know. It's just weird.
I'm right with you. It's a game. So I'm going Washington too, but it's one of those, I'm going Washington, but I'm not feeling good about it. I feel like that's the best way to sum it up. Very similar reasons to you. I think the main point, like you mentioned, I just don't feel like they're going to shoot themselves in the foot as much as the Giants did. Giants, right. They had drives. They got in scoring positions, but then strip sack fumbles, Evan Ingram fumbles, and just like you mentioned, just shooting themselves in the foot one way or another. As much, even though Washington, obviously, I had them going pretty far in my predictions. Unfortunately, sorry, trying to think here, but yeah, I just feel like they're a tad bit more safe with the ball, even though I am afraid also big loss to Buffalo. Sometimes those losses can turn into 2 losses just because you got blown out. But yeah, I'm going with Washington here, but if Atlanta wins and such, so be it. At least we agreed on it, so it's not going to hurt me as much. So that is that. But speaking of Buffalo, they're at home again. They're at home again, favored by 16.5, hosting the Houston Texans off their loss on Thursday night to the Panthers. John, basically, I think we both believe Buffalo will win this game. Question is, will they cover that 16.5? John, do you believe that they can cover that 16.5?
Another one that was really tough because Buffalo, I mean, they can score points against anybody. Houston, I think, is still rolling with Davis Mills. But 16.5, maybe I'm going to be wrong here, but I'm going to take Houston. And it's just because that spread is so big that I think if any little wrinkle of the game plan goes wrong, Houston can all of a sudden cover, right? So I'm taking the points just because I feel like that's the safer pick, but at the same time, I'm not confident in it, and I think the reason the spread is that high is because there's that big of a discrepancy between the teams, and so I'm not super confident in this one. But Houston has not failed me so far. I picked for them against the Jaguars. I picked against them last week, got both right. So I'm going to ride with Houston again on this one, or my gut on a Houston game in this one. And that's that they're going to lose, but I think they'll cover. Maybe some garbage time points or something get them there.
Yeah, that scares me. But ultimately, I am going with Buffalo to win and cover. I just felt like the offense finally started clicking to what they were last week, and they got a little bit of a run game going last week too. And then right now, Buffalo's looking like, if not the best, one of the best teams in AFC. Their defense has looked improved from last year. Remember, that was a weak point, even though I even thought they would be better last year. So guys like Epinesa had another year. He's been popping a little more, and obviously we've already lamented over Gregory Rousseau as well, and he's been a big difference maker for them. So I just think that Buffalo's on a roll right now. You're at home. I think that they'll cover. Josh Allen's balling, but the garbage time backdoor cover. It could be like a 21-point game, and then it would be like 35-14 or something, or 35-10, and they scored touchdown. No, that doesn't cover. Sorry, 35-14. They score a touchdown or something and cover.
Maybe they go over 2, and then they do.
Yeah, like they're behind. They don't give it. They don't care. So we'll see. But
if I'm going to be wrong on this one, it better because Stephon Diggs carried me to a fantasy win. If he keeps putting up these 10-point games and the Bills still blow people out, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, it's just tough because I feel like everyone knows that he's like the number one target. And I think he has more respect around the league at this point. He's like a true number one. So I think he's getting, at least especially in the first 2 weeks, he's been getting the attention of a number one. Which, not saying he's not deserving of number one, but I think Josh Allen's I think that's what the main adjustment has been for Josh Allen is he's no longer the first option for, when he's getting that scrambling and no longer going to be open a lot more than he usually is maybe. So,
well, Josh, let's change that. Let's go back to last year. That was great for me.
But maybe the fact that they've been running the ball more will open that up too, because they've had some success with Singletary and Zach Moss. So hopefully for you, that occurs, and for me, I have Josh Allen in one fantasy league. But going on to the next game, division game. Still unsure on the quarterback situation for the Bears, but they are at home and they are favored by 3.5 against Detroit. I was very surprised with that line. I'm guessing because the Bears are at home. I think if I remember, Vegas always, if you're at home, you basically get 3 points. John, who do you have here in this kind of weird division game?
I went back and forth on this one too. This whole week was tough, but I went with Detroit. I just think I don't know. I don't think they covered the first 2 weeks. I can't remember if they did in week 1 with the crazy ending, but I don't think they did. And so, there's not a whole lot of backing here, but I just think that they've kept their games relatively close, and that was against some teams that are far better than Detroit. Even last week, we saw what they were able to do against Baltimore. Now, I will say that was with some missed opportunities. Hollywood Brown dropped a few touchdowns. Justin Tucker missed a field goal. So, there was some stuff like that was going on. But overall, I think Dan Campbell's team, they're biting kneecaps. They're getting scrappy, and, they're finding a way to keep things close, at least for parts of the game. And with this Matt Nagy-led offense, I'm just not sure how confident I am that they're going to be able to pull away in any sort of fashion if they do win. So I'm going with Detroit to cover here. And also, do we even know who the starting quarterback is for Chicago yet?
We don't know, and hopefully no one from the league that I'm in, or my 2 quarterback league, is really listening, because I kind of want to pick up Justin Fields because I'm hoping to have a better game plan for him. But once again, I don't know if he's starting. If it's Andy Dalton, I'm not going to pick up Andy Dalton. If it's Nick Foles, I'm not picking up Nick Foles, So it's tough.
If it was a 2 QB league, I'd pick up Justin Fields even if he wasn't starting, just because if he does one day.
My thing is I got a really good roster, and it's really tough to drop. So I'm not dropping somebody unless it's a sure thing.
Right.
for Justin. So, yeah, unfortunately, Odell being healthy has kind of screwed me because he was in the IR spot, so I could freely grab someone. But now, like, I like my team, so I don't want to do that. But regardless, yeah, I'm going Detroit too. Just for literally the same reason you said. I think if anything, even if they don't win, they'll keep it close. I think we mentioned I know I mentioned the reactions. Like I like the way how Detroit, like what they're building thus far. They've been competitive, they've been tough. They showed, fight, even though they're definitely not the most talented team. They probably haven't been the more talented team any of the weeks. So, yeah, I'm going with Detroit there, and with Chicago, yeah, even if it is Justin Fields, I just still don't have much trust in Matt Nagy as offensive play caller, designer. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of glad he took the blame. He went in a press conference earlier this week, said, I gotta put him in better positions, yada yada. Well, you should have done that to begin with, Matt, before people were calling you out. That's what offensive coordinators do in general. So I don't know, and just the fact that he still was like, oh, it could be Nick, it could be Andy, he still hasn't made a firm commitment. Like we've seen Nick Foles, we've seen what he can do. He's no longer the Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles. It's not happening. So going with Detroit here to cover. And personally, I kind of hope they win. I think that'd be better. At this point, I don't mean to hate on the man. He has a family, but I'm sure he gets paid well. But I think Matt Nagy needs to go. And this would probably be the first hopefully this is the first stepping stone to leading to that, because
sometimes these coaches, they need to have that year off to find themselves,
Well, and like the crazy thing is, I saw a stat, like he's been a coach for 3 years. He's made playoffs twice. Like it's like, but
even last year, like they were
to be
8-8?
fair, like they have a great defense. That's been the main. Like that's what got them to the playoffs in the first. And the offense was solid then, but then once people figured out the offense, like the defense has still been good. Like we forget that Khalil Mack is still there, and like guys like Roquan Smith and Eddie Goldman and Hakeem Hicks. But unfortunately, because they keep losing and such, it's just there's not much attention in Chicago. So hopefully they can change that. But both John and I both going Detroit there. Going on to the next game. Definitely one that John will be investing. I'll be watching too. This is a good game. Dallas Cowboys at Jerry's World, aka Dallas, favored by 4.5, hosting the Carolina Panthers. Two teams really that have risen above expectations, especially on the defensive side of the ball. John, who do you have here and why?
I don't know who I'm going to pick to win, but I'm going to take Carolina to cover because I think no matter who wins, I'm expecting it to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be a close one, in large part because Carolina has a really good defense that's clearly looking like the strength of their team. And so I think they're going to have some sort of ways to, stop what the Cowboys want to do. I think the key there is the run defense against, Zeke and Pollard, because although we know how much Dak can pass, the last 2 games, they've been relying on the run. And I think that the Cowboys, that's still what they want to do. They want to be a run-first team. And so that's a key area to watch. But then on the flip side, there is no Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers, but I'm not sure that's going to change a ton. Obviously, when your best player's out, things do change. But the Cowboys, their defense has really been reliant on turnovers. They've allowed a lot of big plays throughout the year. They've allowed a lot of yards. So I'm expecting that to continue. I mean, you know how big of a fan I am in their coaching staff, Matt Rule, Joe Brady, Phil Snow. I love all the guys over there. I think they're all amazing coaches. So I think they're going to be well prepared for this game. And yeah, so I don't know who's going to win. I'm taking Carolina to cover. I was a little bit surprised that they were the spread was that big. I thought, maybe the Cowboys would be favored because they're at home. They're coming off 2 wins. But Carolina's 3-0. They have right now statistically the best defense. So, we'll see what happens. They haven't been fully tested by an offense like Dallas yet, but I believe in their team. And based on what I know about Matt Rule, I think their defense could be the real deal. So taking the Panthers to cover.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking Panthers also. It's one of those rare times where you're glad you're picking with the spread and we're not doing straight pick'ems because, yeah, I expect this to be a close game. But I do expect Carolina to come out on top. I just feel like I have a little bit more faith in their defense as a whole than Dallas's. Although they did lose J.C. Horn, so we'll see, for the rest of the season. So we'll see how that impacts them. But regardless, I feel like even guys like Hassan, like Hassan Reddick's been popping. Everyone's been doing really well for them. They've really hit the like, I don't know what to say. I'm trying to praise this. Like, I don't know what the great wording is, but they've really hit the mark on all of their additions, free agent drafts thus far. And I don't mean to jump the gun, but it just thus far it looks really good. They're gelling together real well. So I'll leave it at that. Going Carolina, but like John, I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas wins and covers, or wins and doesn't cover, or Carolina wins. Like, this is going to be a good game regardless.
Random unrelated note.
Uh-huh.
I expect CeeDee Lamb to have a very good game. Matt Rule, unfortunately, has not had a good track record against CeeDee Lamb. When he was the Baylor head coach, we played Oklahoma twice in a month because we played him at the end of the year. Then we played him for the Big 12 title. CeeDee Lamb torched us both times. So that's a matchup to watch. But at the end of the day, I still think they're going to have success defensively.
Alrighty, so going on to the next one here, Miami Dolphins at Miami. They are favored by 2.5, hosting the Indianapolis Colts. John, who you got here and why? And no Tua again for this game. Just important note.
Both of these teams are just dealing with injuries, and it's really unfortunate. Obviously, the Colts, the headline injuries are Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz. It's been that way since preseason. And the Colts, it's weird. They're 0-3. But there's been some of these games that they've been close. They could have won, but they're 0-3. And so I don't know. I probably would have taken them if Miami had looked pretty terrible last week, but with Jacoby Brissett under center, they looked fine. Like, it didn't look like there was a whole lot of drop off in their offense. I know that it's weird to say because the week before they had scored 0. So technically they improved mightily, but it just didn't seem like there was really a massive shift with Jacoby Brissett under center. And like I said in the reactions pod, there was, 2 missed calls in overtime that probably would have got them the win. So I'm taking Miami here. And it's just because I'm not really sure how to feel about Indy and the injuries and just everything that's happening over there, and it's just been a really unfortunate start for them.
Yeah, my heart wanted to pick Indy because it's like they got to win at this point. Like, they've been kind of close, but not close enough. And like, if there's a week to do it right now, it's against a Miami team coming off a loss, a heartbreaking loss in overtime with their backup quarterback. But at the same time, I guess my heart wasn't invested enough, or maybe I just knew too much in my head that it wasn't the pick to make. I'm going Miami also to win and cover. Defense is really good, and we're seeing like the Colts defense has been okay, but we're still seeing the holes like in the secondary. They still don't have like a great playmaking corner, which that they're lacking there. And we're seeing still Carson Wentz still struggling, I guess you could say, in this offense, and we'll see if they're more patient with the run this week. But I feel like, especially Brian Flores, Miami, they like to crowd the right line of scrimmage a lot. So even if I feel like regardless, it's not going to matter. They're probably going to chicken out the Colts and check out of runs, which is what Brian Flores and them are going to want you to do. They know you're not going to call their bluff. So yeah, going Miami here. I'm not sure. Let me look the status of Quentin Nelson for this game too, because I know he left last game with an injury. Sorry, I'll pull that up. By the way, I know it's tough for us to mention injuries or like have injury reports for each game, just because we do this on Thursdays,
right?
And a lot happens. But he's not on an injury report, so maybe he'll be playing. But regardless, Carson Wentz still banged up. Like, it's tough. I'm going Miami here to win and cover. But going on to the next game here, the Cleveland Browns favored by 2.5 going to Minnesota. Kevin Stefanski facing his former team. But anyways, Minnesota. It's at Minnesota. Cleveland favored by 2.5. John, who you got here and why?
I am going with the Vikings 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
I believe in their offense and their ability to put up points. I really do. Like I said, the first 2 games of the year that they lost them by a combined 4 points. They came out and they beat Seattle last week in a crucial game. And like I said, I expected them to come out with some desperation because 0-3 is not a hole they wanted to fall into. They got it done. I think Cleveland's a good team, but I still have concerns about their defense because last week I know they dominated Chicago, but everything about that game it felt like it wasn't a whole lot of Cleveland necessarily being overly amazing, although Myles Garrett and all those guys are really talented. Like, I'm not taking anything away from them, but like the Bears receivers, they had the lowest separation percentage among, or sorry, the lowest average separation among all receivers last week. So they couldn't get away from the corners. And obviously, you can say, some of that's probably Denzel Ward and those guys just playing really good. But as I talked about in the first two games that they played, they were ranked as the 25th ranked coverage unit. And so I don't think they just magically got better. I also don't think they're as bad as 25th. I think they're somewhere in the middle there. And I think that a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who's a veteran, he's been there before, the talented guys like Thielen and Justin Jefferson, I think they could have some success. So I'm not sure they'll win, but I'm taking Minnesota just because I think that they can keep up with a Cleveland offense that's going to want to run the ball, use up a lot of clock. I think that Minnesota is able to score points and at least keep it close. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they were able to come out in here and win this one.
So I'm actually going with Cleveland for this one to win and cover. I just feel like, unlike Seattle, I feel like at least their front seven is more solid to stop the run, even though Minnesota could be getting Dalvin Cook back. I think he's still listed as questionable.
Right.
And regardless, I feel like Cleveland's the more talented team than Seattle, just more sound. And also on offense, like, they have more answers. They have a better run game and an offensive line to lean on too. So that's why I went Cleveland. And they're just taking care of the ball right now. And once again, I'm not entirely confident in Minnesota's pass defense, especially their corners. We've already seen, Patrick Peterson get turned around, and he's not having a great. He's not having a great year. Like, he's average at best at this point. And Odell, I looked like he looked solid last week in his first game back. So, I expect Cleveland to win and cover here, especially if Stefanski, maybe a little bit of revenge game, even though he left on his own terms. Who knows? Sometimes they create their own narrative, but this was a tough one to pick. But I just feel like Cleveland's the better team right now, and maybe Minnesota could be right in that high of winning, finally getting the win, which could work either way. Maybe the pressure's off now and they play better, so that could come back to bite me in the butt. But who knows? So going Cleveland there. That's another disagreement of ours. Going on to another one, New Orleans Saints at New Orleans. I believe this is actually at New Orleans, so good for them. They are favored by 7.5, hosting the New York Giants, the G-Men. John, who are you going with here and why?
I'm taking the Saints, and I know that if I said this in any other year, it'd be a little bit crazy, but I'm doing it because of their defense. It's not even because of their offense. It's their defense. Their defense has been really impressive, and I think that the two wins that they've had so far, it was off the back of their defense. I think they're going to cause some turnovers here. I think that Daniel Jones, he's always good for a fumble or an interception in a game. And so I think those are going to happen. I think those could be some game-changing plays, some momentum-killing ones. And overall, I don't think they're going to allow Saquon Barkley to come out and have his, big bounce-back game that people are hoping for. I know I think he had a solid one last week, like 60 yards and a touchdown. But, yeah, I'm riding with the Saints defense here. I also think that Alvin Kamara is going to have a lot of success against the Giants. Blake Martinez, I believe, is out for the year. I might be wrong on that. I think I saw that he was injured.
I think he's out for the year.
Yeah, so that's the Giants' best linebacker, and he's not. I don't know. He's good, but he's not amazing, right? He's not, one of the elite linebackers, but still, he's very important for the Giants' defense because they've just never really invested heavily in the linebacker position. And so I'm not sure who the next man up is. And overall, I just haven't been super impressed in their ability to stop, the opposing offenses. And maybe it's just because Atlanta beat them last week and they're 0-3. And some of these teams like Washington was able to put up a lot of points on them. But I'm taking New Orleans here. I might be wrong. The 7.5 makes me a little uncomfortable. If it was like 6.5, I'd feel a lot better about this one. But yeah, I'm going to take the Saints.
So I think the Saints will win this game, but I feel like the Giants defense still good, still solid enough. And I think that they'll slow the Saints down enough. And we've seen the offense, except for the Green Bay game, Saints offenses hasn't been hasn't been like, light beam, a laser show, putting a bunch of points. They've just been really efficient, taking care of the ball, which seems to be an emphasis with Jameis at quarterback. And I feel like the Giants, too, the Saints' run defense has been the most impressive part to me. I thought that would be a weakness. And even though Marshawn Lattimore is back, and it does scare me because I just look at an injury report now. Slayton is questionable. Galladay is questionable as well. I believe Sterling Shepard is out or is already dealing with an injury. Regardless, and Kadarius Toney's barely gotten any playing time this year, which he's already been griping about, which I hear it. I'm going with the Giants, just kind of a gut feeling here. I just feel like they'll keep it close enough. I think their defense should keep it close enough. Once again, like I mentioned, this is a team that easily could be 3-0. They're 0-3. I just feel like desperation will factor in to their performance. And hey, maybe they'll win, but I feel like, if anything, that they'll cover. So hopefully the fact that the Saints, apparently their left tackle Terran Armstead's doubtful, but with Sean Payton, he probably has a solid tackle that he's coached up right behind him. So going with the Giants to cover, but Saints to win there. So there's me threading the needle. But going on to the next noon game, this one will be pretty easy. Tennessee Titans favored by 7.5 against the New York Jets. Unfortunately did not put the app, so I don't know what that exactly is, but I suspect we're both going Tennessee. Question is, will they cover? John, do you believe that Tennessee will cover? And it is in New York, by the way, if that helps.
Yeah, I was going to say that since the Giants are away, typically they put the Jets at home in that week. I'm going to take Tennessee here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The Jets they don't have a lot of talent across the board. So I know that I think Julio Jones and A.J. Brown are both dealing with injuries, might both miss this game, but still I'm taking Tennessee. Derrick Henry doesn't need receivers to do what he does. So I think he's going to have a good game. And yeah, I don't really have a lot of belief in the Jets just overall roster as of right now.
Yeah, it hurts me, but I'm going with Tennessee to win and cover as well. Their offensive line's not great. Their teams have kind of figured out their pass protection rules, and that's also how they're getting guys free. And like John mentioned, just general talent-wise too, hard for them to match up with teams. On defense, there's probably one of their best defensive players, Marcus May, the safety. He is already ruled out for this game. So it already kind of iffy defense, going to be missing a key contributor. Even without Julio and A.J. Brown, like John mentioned, I just don't really see them being able to stop Derrick Henry. And even Ryan Tannehill can make a few plays, even with the receivers and guys they have. So, it's just going to be more tough sledding for my boy Zach Wilson. Hopefully he can hang in there. But going Tennessee as well here. So we'll leave it at that. And going to the last game of the noon slate. Kansas City Chiefs favored by 6.5 going to Philadelphia. I'm not sure. I think this is the first time Andy's been back in Philly since he left. I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, kind of to be theme of the week, a little bit of, homecoming a bit. But anyway, John, who do you have here for this game? You think the Chiefs can bounce back, or you think it'll be the Eagles who will be bouncing back in this one?
Bit shocked that this line is only at 6.5. I know that Kansas City is 1-2, but we saw that the absolute offensive clinic that Dallas was able to put up against this Eagles team. And so I expect Kansas City. I mean, I was wrong about them last week. I said I wasn't going to come out and, bet against them in a loss. I'm definitely not going to do it after 2 losses against a bad team like Philly, who, has different injuries and just a lot of question marks, and even their coaching staff. I don't really understand what they're doing. Once again, I'm going to say this, another time, but last week they ran the ball 3 times with the running backs. That's just poor game planning and poor game management. So yeah, I'm taking Kansas City. I think they just have the edge in almost every spot.
Yeah, I'm going Kansas City as well. I think, like John mentioned, if Dallas can tear them apart, I think Kansas City will. I am a little bit worried about Kansas City's run defense, but especially, I should have checked the stats, but Brandon Brooks may miss this game. I know I like Landon Dickerson, but still, I just feel like Kansas City, maybe, once again, desperation might come into play. Like the Raiders and the Broncos are both 3-0. And I know that, I think we all feel that Kansas City's still a better team than them. But regardless, they're going to have to dig themselves out of this hole. And I imagine Andy Reid pleaded that to, sent that message across, and they should have probably won both the games they lost if they didn't make mistakes. And it was just Patrick Mahomes really too. He's really the face of that issue, so he's got to clean things up, and I expect him to as well. And even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he's fumbled at least in 2 straight weeks. Baltimore game fumbled last week as well, so I expect them to clean up their act, especially against Philly, and get back on track. So I also have Kansas City winning and covering that spread for that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So now going on to the afternoon games, the LA Rams at LA at SoFi Stadium. They are favored by 4.5, hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Undefeated matchup here, both 3-0. John, who do you have here in this NFC West matchup?
I am going with Arizona. I'm not sure if they're going to win, but 4.5 felt a little big to me. I wouldn't be shocked that whoever wins does it with a field goal. So I just feel like it's going to be a really close game. And so I'm taking Arizona here. The part that scares me is just Matt Stafford and this Rams passing attack. It's basically you got to keep up with it. And I know that the Cardinals, I wouldn't say they're reliant on their run game, but if Kyler Murray isn't running the ball and, DeAndre Hopkins is covered by Jalen Ramsey, and DeAndre Hopkins is already coming off some, injuries and being banged up and all that stuff, what are they going to do? But overall, I've been impressed. Each week, different guys are stepping up, whether it's Rondale Moore, it's AJ Green, Christian Kirk, Chase Edmonds has been good. James Conner is offering him good value, near the goal line. So I think they have a lot of weapons. And so I think it's going to be a shootout, and I'm taking the Cardinals to cover.
I'm taking the LA Rams to win and cover. I just, in regards to addressing the Carolina offense, I mean, this is a Rams defense that is built on speed, and I think that they are going to give the Cardinals problems on that end. Raheem Morris, very good DC. I think he's going to probably have some things for Cliff and Kyler, especially. And regardless, I think their front four will be able to contain Kyler. Once again, this was a team that was built to stop and slow down Russell Wilson, the Seahawks. They can do so against Kyler. And then on the flip side, like John mentioned, I just think, especially last week, we saw Jacksonville have some success. Now, granted, they had, the pick six flea flicker, that was just bad decision by Trevor Lawrence. I don't think Matt Stafford will make that mistake like that. I think this Rams team is just a more sound on offense, on passing and running than the Jaguars were. So, especially once again at SoFi, that place is going to be rocking, especially, coming off that huge win against Tampa. And it's just their team that really right now, barring injuries because they're so top heavy, they're rolling. So I'm going with the Rams. I'm riding that momentum. Sorry, Kyle, a.k.a. Panda, but I'm riding the momentum. You can hate on me when we talk later. Another NFC West showdown, divisional showdown, the San Francisco 49ers at San Francisco. I almost said Candlestick. They don't play there anymore. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Seattle Seahawks, also coming off a loss. So both these teams really need to win here. John, who you got here and why?
Taking the Seahawks. I don't really know why. I guess I just believe in Russell Wilson and their passing attack. I'm not very impressed by the 49ers secondary. We saw what Rodgers and Devontae Adams did to him last week, so I would expect DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett to have some, success here. But overall, I don't really have too many explanations outside of that. It's just kind of a gut call. Seattle don't really feel like they're going to fall to 1-3.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially I think desperation. I know I'm saying desperation a lot, but it's
a real thing.
It's a real thing, especially with Seattle right now. Like, we have to remember, I know Russell cleaned it, cleared the air, but it's a real possibility that come next year he's going to want to be moved again. And so I think that plays into Seattle. It does scare me though, me picking this. I think San Francisco will win, but it'll be close. I think, like John mentioned, I think Seattle will keep it close because they're going to probably be airing it out, doing similar to Green Bay did, and just attack those corners with DK, and I think Tyler Lockett is questionable, so that is a little bit scary. But what does scare me is the other side, their defense. Like, they really they just got to go balls to the wall every play, or else because they can't cover and they can't just defend. The defend the run with just their front seven. They got to blitz and do crazy stuff to create stops. And as we saw last week, Minnesota, they were able to just slowly pick them apart and do what they want. I imagine Kyle Shanahan will be able to do the same as well. So that does scare me. But going Seattle, it's just tough to pick. Like Kansas City, it's tough to pick against Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll after, especially I would call it a bad loss. Like they didn't do anything in the second half. So, another gut call there. Hey, sometimes those work out. Sometimes just can't go with it and with the analysis. But all right, going on to the next game, the Denver Broncos at Mile High, favored by only 1.5 against the Baltimore Ravens. John, are you believing in Denver, or are you going with Lamar and the boys?
I don't believe in Denver yet. I said this on the other podcast. You don't pick who you play, but they've only played teams that haven't won a game, and so I need to see more before I'm really fully confident in picking them against a team like Baltimore. Baltimore has had 3 really close games so far, and one of them is Detroit, so that's a little bit concerning. But they've come out on top more often than not. I don't know how Denver is going to stop Lamar Jackson. I'm going to take the Ravens here, but it always worries me going against Ted the spread because this man is, the king of covering.
Yeah, so I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater in Denver. I think so. In regards to I think their defense will be able to slow down Lamar Jackson and that run attack. I think that front seven can definitely handle that. And I think this secondary, Patrick Surtain's been playing amazing. Kyle Fuller's had a really good year. So Hollywood Brown's had a solid year. I know he had some drops, but even if there weren't any drops, I think those two guys can handle covering Hollywood Brown and the likes of Mark Andrews. And on the other side, even though they did lose KJ Hamler, I think Teddy's shown enough that he can push the ball downfield, push the envelope when he needs to, but still be the Teddy that takes care of the ball and manages the game well. So I'm going with Denver here, especially Baltimore coming off 2 emotional wins in the last second. I think at some point you got to run out of juice, and especially going 2 Mile High to play. I'm going with Denver here to win and cover. So that's going to be a fun game. But unfortunately, I will not be watching that game as much because I'll be focusing on this next one. My Packers at Lambeau, coming off that big win Sunday night. They are favored by 6.5, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, John, who are you going with here in regards to this matchup?
Taking Green Bay. The one thing that worries me is I think TJ Watt's going to come back, and I don't know the full status on that. I don't know if it's fully confirmed he's going to, but it seems like he's on track to. And with Bakhtiari still out, I think that they can create some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. But still, overall, we've seen how bad. Do you have the injury status on him?
He's not on the injury report.
Okay,
so I assume he's good to go.
Yeah, so it seems like he's going to be good to go, but still, we've seen how bad the Steelers' offensive line is. We've seen that they can't really get a lot going in the run game, and even if they could, I was impressed by Green Bay's run defense against San Francisco, and we know that's what the Niners want to do. So I think that they can hold the Steelers' offense from being able to score a lot of points. They just really haven't been able to do it against anybody so far. And I don't really see any reason as to why Green Bay can't follow suit and continue to stop them. I don't know, once again, I don't know the injury status of Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster. I think they're both questionable.
Juju's questionable. Claypool's questionable. Deontay was actually officially off the injury report. He had full practice today. That's today being Thursday, so it looks like he might be on track to play this week.
So, if any of them miss the game, it just makes life easier for Jair Alexander in that secondary, honestly. But even if they're all healthy, once again, that offensive line, it's just so hard to do anything with a poor offensive line and with Big Ben not, playing amazing. So, yeah, I'm taking Green Bay. I just think that Aaron Rodgers and that offense, they're going to put up points, and I don't know how Pittsburgh is going to be able to keep up.
So, yeah, I'm going with Green Bay to win and cover as well. Main reason being Big Ben. I don't want to sound like a Big Ben hater Always loved him and respected him, but it's just bad. What I can't say, there's no other way to say it. Like the Bengal game was bad, and in theory, I would like to say the only way to go is up. But I don't know how far further up we can go. I haven't been impressed at all the way Big Ben's played. Their only win came because their defense kept them in the game, and then they had a block punt and favorable field position at one point. It took some amazing catches from their wide receivers on most of their drives to keep the drives alive. So yeah, and I think even with TJ Watt back, I think Green Bay will find their groove. I think they'll find ways to move the ball on offense. And yeah, like even so, I just don't believe in this Pittsburgh offense, unfortunately. I do believe they have talent. It's a little bit, like John mentioned, the offensive line's not great, still not gelling, and yeah, Big Ben just hasn't been good. So, and a little bit of the offensive play calling too. It's just a bad mix of things. That's why I'm going with my Packers to win and cover here against the Steelers. But going on to the next game, probably the game of the week, probably one of the most hyped game of the year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady, they are favored by 7.5 going to Foxborough. A little bit of revenge game for Brady / Belichick, especially with all the news that's been going on this week. But anyways, Tampa Bay favored by 7.5 going to New England. John, who do you have here, Bill or Tom?
I'm taking Tom and the Buccaneers. It's tough because you'd think that Bill's going to know everything they're going to do. But honestly, I'd be a little more concerned with Tom and the Buccaneers knowing a lot of what the Patriots are going to do, because Tom has worked with that entire coaching staff for most of his career. And I think that he's going to be able to easily help the defensive staff for Tampa understand what they're doing offensively to, try and protect Mac Jones and help him have success. So I'm going with Tampa here. I mean, they have a really good run defense, so I don't expect Damian Harris to have a good one. James White's out. And so I don't really know what I'm going to get out of the Patriots backfield. And we've seen that when Mac Jones is asked to throw a majority of the game, it just didn't, pan out super well. So even against a banged up secondary that the Buccaneers have, I'm going to take Tampa because of this defense, because of their ability to probably slow down rookie Mac. And also, I don't know, I expected Mac to not be starting at this point because of this game. I thought that it would just be unfair, the comparisons that would be placed onto him, unfair, the pressure that's placed onto him on simply a regular season game. And I'm not saying that he's going to crumble to it. I don't know how Mac is when it comes to those kind of things. But, I just feel like this game is going to be a lot larger than it really should be in the grand scheme of things, just because it's Tom Brady's homecoming to New England. Also, I don't know how much of a home game this is going to be, right? Because a lot of Patriots fans still love Tom.
So, yeah, that'd be interesting to see. But I'm going with the Patriots here. I think Tampa Bay will win. I just feel like New England, though, Bill, I feel like, to have a good beat on, because they're going to probably see what the Rams did last week. I think to have a good beat on what to do. I think they probably already had one, but maybe, have add a few more things from the Rams on the defensive side of the ball to slow down Tom in that offense. I am worried about the flip side, like you mentioned, Patriot offense versus that Bucs D. But I just feel like, especially, going on the past few weeks, it's Todd Bowles, Bruce Arians. They're going to want to blitz and, be super aggressive. So I feel like, especially, and it does worry me, but I feel like if there's a rookie that could maybe take advantage of the opportunities, he's going to have some one-on-ones. It could be Mac Jones. I mean, heck, they went out and signed Richard Sherman this week because they need help at corner. So even though the wide receivers aren't great, Kendrick Bourne had an okay game last week. And I think everyone's still trying to find their footing in the Patriot offense because, all the receivers are basically brand new except for Jacoby Myers. Even their tight ends are still figuring it out. So I feel like they'll take advantage of those one-on-one opportunities and at least keep it close. Probably no one, my luck, and maybe a 14-point game, they just score a garbage time touchdown to keep it close, but spread-wise. But I just feel like New England going to keep it close at the end of the day. So that was why I went with them. But honestly, wouldn't shock me too much if they win. But we'll see. I'm not going to sit here and call and take my shot on that upset. I'm not going to do that. I'll just keep that reserved. So that is a Sunday nighter. Now we're going on to the last game, another divisional matchup. The LA Chargers, they will also be playing at SoFi Stadium, but a day later. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Both these teams coming off some big wins last week. John, who do you have here and why?
I'm going with the Chargers, and I think a large part is what their defense is going to be able to do in this one. Derek Carr has been lighting it up. I think he's throwing like an average of 400 yards a game so far through 3. But in week 2, and it's Brandon Staley, right? He's the Rams defense coordinator last year, new head coach. They run these 2 safety high sets to start the play, and they're basically saying, we want you to run the ball. We're not going to let you beat us over the top. And in week 2, that led to Dak Prescott not having a lot of success. Yes, the Cowboys did win that one, but it was off the ground game. Dak didn't throw a touchdown. He had 1 interception, and I think 200 yards. And then last week against the Chiefs, Mahomes, 260 yards, barely above percent completion percentage, and he threw 2 interceptions. He did have 3. So, but it's Patrick Mahomes. That's the best quarterback in the league. So, he had some success, but overall, the Chargers were able to, give him some problems. So I'm going to take the Chargers here because, I think that their defense matches up well with what the Raiders' strength has been so far. I'm taking them. It will be interesting this Raiders defense versus the Chargers because we know how Max Crosby and those guys have been doing. The Chargers offensive line for the most part has been solid, but their right tackle spot, I don't know if Balaga is still hurt. I don't know what the timetable was for his injury. He's not still hurt?
Not on the injury report.
Okay, so
Unless
if he's
on IR.
back, well, actually he might be. I don't know. If he's back, that's big for them because Norton, their backup right tackle, he just hasn't been very good. But Slater, Lindsley, those guys, they've been really solid so far. So I think they could have some success against this Raiders pass rush and defensive line overall. And, one thing that is always really useful is having a running back like Austin Eckler, who's just really deadly out of the backfield receiving wise, so that, if your offensive line is struggling, you can get the ball out really quick to a guy who's a really good playmaker. So I'm taking the Chargers here. I'm sorry, Mike. I know you'll be mad.
All right, so I'm going with the Chargers with John, just like kind of John said. For me, and I hate to say this, I know our friend Mike's going to be in our DMs or my DMs. A few more difference makers on the Chargers end, especially on the offensive side. Mike Williams, who's been red hot, tough to cover. Big receiver, just even the one-on-ones, even if he's covered like we saw last week, he's going to win those. Obviously, Herbert's great, and then Eckler, Keenan Allen, they have a few more answers, and especially with I'm already blanking on the Chargers cornerback.
Asante Samuel Jr.
The Raiders. I'm sorry.
Trayvon Mullen.
Yes, so he's questionable. So if he's out, that's a huge issue. Chargers O-line's pretty good too. We've seen. So I feel like they'll be able to handle. They call him. I guess the nickname's Mad Max Crosby and the gang there. On the flip side, I just feel like, too, like John mentioned, their defense has a little more answers, especially, Joey Bosa on the edge. Derwin James, I know he's questionable for this game, but I imagine he'll be in the game and probably, guarding Darren Waller most of the game. And from there, Brandon Staley, really great defensive, schemes. He's very game plan specific. So I think he'll have some answers to some of the Raiders' answers, because Raiders. And that's what does scare me, though, is the Raiders are well balanced on offense. They can beat you, dissect you, 12 play, 80 yards, short passes down the field, and then you start creeping up on those. Okay, we can throw bombs to Ruggs, Braylon Edwards. Is it Braylon? Brian Edwards. Wrong Edwards. My apologies. Or even Waller. And then they're still solid enough in the run game, even without Josh Jackson. We saw last week they can still make holes for
Jacobs.
How am I saying Josh Jackson? Yes, Josh Jacobs.
Which I think he did return to practice today.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I think Gruden did mention he's not afraid to put in Barber
Right.
if Jacobs isn't, up to
who's
par.
good.
And also Kenyon Drake. So they have a litany of running backs they can throw at you. That does scare me. And it wouldn't shock me. Honestly, thinking back right now, maybe I should have kept the Raiders to keep it close. But I already threaded the needle like twice this week. So I'm just going with the team I think is going to win, which is going to be the Chargers, mainly because they're at home. That's the main pushing point as well. So that is my thoughts on that game, and those are our picks for the week.